Just want to start by saying a huge thanks to everybody for joining us on this Zoom call today on International Women's Day, no less. The topic of today's discussion is women working in cricket, and I'm delighted to be joined, as I'm sure you are, by a panel of three such women. Firstly, Danni Warren, Regional Head of Women's Cricket for the London and East Region for Sunrisers, Emma Whiteman, Middlesex Women's Cricket Operations Executive, and Leah Keefe, who is Lead Physio of the Sunrisers. So we've got some questions to ask of our panel, which we've pulled together. However, if any of you on the call would like to ask any questions, then we do have the chat facility, and time permitting, I don't know how pressed you are for time, but time permitting, we'll get those questions put to the panel at the end of the recording. So without further ado, we're here to talk about women working in cricket. Danni, firstly up for you, as someone that's been on a long journey in the game to where you are now. How did it all begin for you, and how did you first get involved in the game?
Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Less of the long, please, Fletch. It's been a great experience so far, and hopefully there's a lot longer to go on the other side of it. So, when did I start working in cricket? I've played cricket for a long, long time, but I think I started working in it probably the early 2000s, doing some volunteering and part-time work for both my club and for Middlesex. Some of the earliest memories I have was stewarding at Outgrounds, which was some of the longest and most tedious hours of my life, but also some of the most fun I could have asked for. So doing that got me involved with the club. I've been involved coaching on lots of levels within Middlesex since the mid-2000s, so I think 2005 was the first time I worked with one of our squads. And then ever since, I've been involved in some way, shape or form, whether it be in full-time or for a period of time when I was working outside the game, continuing to coach with the pathway. In more recent times, I was head of women's cricket at Middlesex from 2017 until last year, and I'm currently, as you said earlier, the director of women's cricket regionally, covering the area that Middlesex fall into, which also covers Essex, Northants and the national counties that span here. So I've done a lot of jobs in the game. I've been on the development side, the performance side. I've been paid for some of the work. I've not been paid for a lot more work than I've ever been paid for. So I think there's a few years of experience back here, and it's been very enjoyable, everything that I have done.
Thanks, Danni. Over to you, Emma, remembering to unmute. You obviously also started playing cricket, and that's how you first got into the game. How easy did you find it making that transition from player into the current role in administration that you're now in?
Yeah, mine's slightly different in that, yes, I play cricket, but I'm sitting beside two ex-county cricketers, and I'm strictly club. And I only started playing cricket when I was 23. So I had a lot of watching cricket before then, when I'd go and watch cricket with my dad, who taught me to score and do all that. Started playing cricket later. And so then through my club, became captain, became a coach support worker, then became a coach. And from being a coach and doing the managing admin side for the club, I started pretty much knocking on Middlesex's door saying, hi, I'd really like to work in women's cricket. Or girls cricket. I was very specific, and I had a 5-year plan. I had a career before. I'd left that career because I had children. And because I wanted so much to be involved, I knew that I wasn't going to suddenly at 40 become a county cricket player. But I love being involved in that elite environment while still playing in my club cricket, which I still love playing. So the shift has been less dramatic for me because I've never been one of the players. And going from all the voluntary roles as Middlesex women's manager, and then coaching the under-11s and the under-13 development county girls, knowing these jobs were coming. And I think Danni can attest to the fact that I was saying to Danni, what do I need to do so that when these jobs come out, because a lot of people knew that women's cricket was looking like it was going to professionalise. And so I was going, what do I need? What do I need to do so that when this job comes out, I'm in a position to apply for it? And that's pretty much what I did. So I've been working towards this role for about 4 years. And then it came out and I applied and I got it and I was delighted. So for me, it's been a great transition because it's something I've very much been focused on getting. So it was a bit easier almost, but I didn't realise quite how big the role was going to be.
Thank you, Emma. Leah, your background is obviously slightly different. You worked, I think I'm right in saying you worked for the NHS and then started in rugby, working with Saracens. What prompted your move into cricket?
So sorry, just one of the players. I've been involved with cricket as a player, coach, manager since I was about 9. So cricket's always been in the background of my life. And like Emma said, that I played for Derbyshire before moving out to New Zealand. So cricket's always been a big part of my life. So the end goal was always to be able to get back to working in cricket, ideally full time. So working through the NHS, it got me to be able to understand a lot more of where physio sits in a wider position. So rather than just specialising in one area, I covered quite a large area. I worked out in the community, so I did a lot of autonomous working, which a lot of sport is quite autonomous. You know, sometimes you're out on the side of a pitch and you're the only person there who is kind of first aid and trauma qualified. So being able to work by yourself is quite an important thing. I also worked part-time in Saracens, which as an elite setup was really useful to find out how elite sport works, how the pathways work, and also how we connect both with the grassroots, but also up to England. So you're getting that full kind of scale through of where do the players need to come from, work through, and where does physio sit with that development. So the whole goal of that was to get back into working into cricket, and being able to combine working in women's sport as well as working in cricket was the dream, really. It's something which I've been wanting to be a physio since I was about 14. So we're going about 11 years of building up to get to this role.
There's a lot of dreams being realised here. Leah, how have you found working in cricket to be any different working in rugby?
It's very different, very, very different. So in rugby, we had a team of about 4 physios plus interns and students. So we had quite a big medical team plus our doc, and then working with our S&C. In cricket, it's a lot smaller. So in the women's, it's just myself, and then I have my S&C Tom as well. And then I feed into kind of the support from the counties that go into us. So at the moment, I'm working quite a lot with Middlesex and working with the medical team there, which is really great support. But when you're in the environment, you're a lot more on your own than compared to rugby. Obviously, with rugby having a lot more injury risks, that's why we need a bigger team. But it's good to be able to kind of have that teamwork, but also you're very much isolated compared to rugby.
Good stuff. Thanks, Leah. Danni, back to you. Obviously, yourself and Emma both started out as players, obviously at different phases in life. We're currently advertising for some roles for apprentices to join the club, and I know as a club we love for more female applicants for those roles. The deadline, I think, to apply is this Thursday, so if anyone fancies it on this call, then jump in quick. But Danni, what would you say to encourage more females to consider a career in cricket and even considering through an apprentice scheme?
You know, I would say is I've worked in cricket a long, long time, and it isn't like a job. And I think you hear that said an awful lot, don't you, about working in something that you're passionate about, and it doesn't feel like you're doing a 9 to 5. And I'm probably sometimes I could be told I'm at the wrong end of the spectrum there, that I work 24/7 and you don't switch off. But it never feels like you're doing that. And I've worked in other things. I left school. I first went into working in IT sales. I was pretty terrible at the 9 to 5 idea and things that you could just leave at your desk. And even at a young age, I was very, very aware that I wanted to work in something that I had a passion for. Now, if that is for other people in a different route, then fantastic. But if you're passionate about something, it's a cliche, but it feels like you don't go to work. Yes, there are stressful moments, and there are moments where you wish you could get away from things. But when you remember why you do it, you remember why you love the game, and that you get to watch cricket pretty much for most of your life, whether it's players in a training environment, whether it's catching up with games, whether it's just being around a ground. I think the big thing for me is around the passion, and we see that in the players, and you see that in these two. Like the team we've built at Sunrisers over the last year, and it's not exclusively female, but everyone has such a desire and a drive to see the game develop on the women's side. We talk about cricket a lot. love the idea of seeing people be successful and achieving their dreams. And I think you can't get a better feeling than that. And whether that's at a club, like I've volunteered in clubs, and you really see how beneficial it is to young players having that structured environment that they can come into, and that harnesses their love for the game. So you get so much more back when you're working in an environment like this than you may do in some other fields. And yeah, jump on that apprentice scheme, because you can't work in a better place than Middlesex to find people that will give you advice along the way. There's some fantastic people at the club, and that can only really open your eyes to the opportunities that are out there.
Good stuff. Thanks, Dan. I'm going to show my dexterity here and jump from my questions to those coming in the chat room. Claire Ludlow has asked, and Dan, if you wouldn't mind staying on for this one, how important has it been to have a plan for your career, particularly in women's cricket?
If I'm totally honest, Claire, whilst I always wanted to work in this particular element of the game, I wouldn't say I've had a huge plan around my career. And I think that's something that's changing in women's sport, and possibly in sport as a whole. Is I came into work in Middlesex out of university, and I was just very happy to have a job. I started as a community coach. I then worked into the development team, more office-based. I've worked around the women and girls environment, chance to shine, facilities, club development. So I was always very attracted to the elite side. I loved playing. I loved pushing myself. Now it feels like there are opportunities there that means you can start to see the next level. So I've been incredibly fortunate. If you'd asked me 15 plus years ago when I started working full time in the game, would I be sat here now? It probably would be more of a dream. Whereas I can see now that players could be looking at where they go when they finish playing. And do I go into coaching? Do I go into officiating? Can I go into the administration side? And we're really lucky in that we've made the dreams of a few people come true in terms of professionalising their cricket career. But what we're also doing with a number of those girls is giving them opportunities to work within the county structure as our engagement officers, to give them an idea of where their skill sets might lie at the end of the career path of playing, and where they might want to go after that. So in one respect, yes, have a plan. On another respect, don't stop dreaming that something else might happen, because my plan 15 odd years ago wouldn't have had me here, because it wasn't possible then. And things will be even better in another 15, 20 years time. So dream as well as have a slight idea about how you're going to get there.
Oh, good stuff. I'm going to dust off that dream of being a test opener for England again then.
Anyone can do that at the moment, Fletch, so you're in.
This is very true. This is very true. Emma, I'm going to come to you now. You mentioned earlier your dad took you to club cricket and you were involved in various guises in that club. As a sport, we're obviously doing a lot more today to encourage women to get involved in the game. And I know at Middlesex, we've recently advertised a course for women's umpires. Amazingly, we've had over 110 women join an online coaching course. We've got similar courses planned for scorers and also coaches. What would you say to anyone that wants to get involved in that, as someone that's kind of done various roles in clubs?
I'm a big fan of saying yes. I said yes to, I think, every single opportunity in cricket that presented itself, I took. Because I wanted to increase my knowledge, I wanted to increase my skills, and I wanted to give back to the game a lot as well. So initially they said, you want to do coach support worker course, that's now level 1 coaching. And I said yes, and loved it. Then I did my level 2 coaching and loved it. Went to Middlesex, they said, do you want to do chance to shine? Yes. Do you want to be women's manager? Yes. Now I've done the 100 up level 1 umpire course, said yes to that. I've just always said yes, because I felt the more I knew, the more I could give back. So now it means the club I'm at, I'm coaching the girls type. We're setting up a girls section, and I'm one of the coaches for that. Our women's side, the club I'm at's a fairly new women's side, so I'm coaching the women as well. And by saying yes, I found my niche. So when I was working with Middlesex, I've never wanted to. I realised quickly I didn't want to go and coach the women. I loved coaching the under 11s, and I loved coaching all-stars, and I love novices and young ones. So the more I said yes, the more I understood that within me. And so it helped work my path to where I am now, knowing that, so no, I don't actually want to go and coach England women. I have no interest in doing that. But this role is good for me, and I'll go and coach the girl squad and the little ones and love that. So always say yes if an opportunity presents itself. I've never had a regret.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks, Emma. Sticking with you, Marilyn Smith sent a question in on the chat box. She's asking, what exactly is your role?
Yeah, what do I do? So I'm the Women's Cricket Operations Executive for the Sunrisers, London Spirit for the 100 ball, Middlesex, and MCC. Yes, Danny? Yes, MCC too, sort of, a bit, yeah. So I pretty much do the logistical side of getting our players onto the pitch. Not actually playing, that's the coach's job and Leah's job, but right, we need our players to be in this location. Let's look at, do we need hotels? Do we need coaches? Do they know where they're going? Do they know the time they need to be there? When do the coaches need to be there? It's a lot of also looking at external things that the players are doing, what educational commitments we have. I work with the county age group girls. I sort of do a lot of things that basically allow cricket to happen, all the background stuff, and then whatever Danny tells me to do as well.
I know from working in Middlesex for the best part of a decade that that's a very underrated role, an undervalued role, but it's so important. So important, and in a number of sports, I think you'll probably find 4 people doing that job. So it's probably a very good thing that you're a yes person, because if we had any other way, we'd be in trouble, I think. Leah, I'm going to come to you now. I'm guessing rugby is the same in the fact that it still today is a largely male-dominated sport in terms of the careers that exist within it. What have you, in both rugby and cricket sense, what have you found the challenges to succeeding being a woman in sport?
Sometimes it's that time, being able to have that commitment, because we all have lives outside of our careers and outside of our sport, and it's being able to have that time. And both cricket and rugby, we don't work in normal times. We don't have a 9-to-5 job, so it's kind of being able to have that balance across both. So both as a student and when I was doing my NHS role, I worked alongside that. So as a student, I volunteered at my local rugby club to be able to build up those hours, because that's a big thing that sport looks at, especially in elite, is what have you done before this? So what hours have you put in at what level? And it's similar to Emma, it's saying yes to those opportunities, but also making sure that you have the time to do it, because we need to have a bit of downtime as well. And I found that was quite difficult at times in my life. I haven't always balanced it right, and I've said yes, and then I've absolutely burnt out. And it's having that time for yourself, but also time for that career building. And it's by putting in those hours as a student and then putting in those hours alongside the NHS work, it's allowed me to be in a position where I am now, working full-time in elite sport. And it's just making sure you have that balance, but you put the time towards things.
Brilliant. Thanks, Leah. Danny, I'm just going to go back slightly now and go back to you as a slightly younger person in club cricket. Emma mentioned obviously the importance of volunteers and coaches and umpires and scorers, and Emma pretty much took on every role that came her way, and here she is now. How important are those officials in club cricket? Because I certainly know from my time in club cricket, there weren't that many people to stick their hands up. So the courses that we're running to get more people into coaching and scoring and umpiring are pretty important, yeah?
Oh, they're so important, and I think you never know how much work goes on behind the scenes to get a game on, and I think that's always been a frustration, certainly in latter times, when you see people are much more vocal about their disappointments in these times. So when someone's not happy with something, there's a lot of criticism thrown in the direction of people. They don't realise how hard they work to make it happen for them, and I think the people behind the scenes are the reason that the clubs can exist. They're the reason that any team can exist, and they're the reason that I love the game, and they're the reason that these guys love the game as well. And I think I got asked a question a few months ago in a similar forum, and they said, what's your advice? And my advice was, give as much as you can, because the more you give, the more you get back, whether that's vicariously just through seeing other people's enjoyment, or whether it's through building your knowledge or something like that. And actually, Emma said a really good thing earlier, like the more you do, the more you understand. And I might be fortunate enough right now to have a job where I can sit at the top of a tree in a elite environment, but I 100% understand and realise that I can't do any of my job without a committee member at a club within this region, within the county, doing their job really well. And it is part of a structure, it's part of a process and a pathway that we all contribute to. So I like to see people taking up as many opportunities as you can. And committees have so many different facets to it. You might be good with numbers, you can help on that side. If you don't want to coach, you can do so many other things around the club, whether it's just helping out by cooking the barbecue. You will love it, and the sun tends to come out every now and again, so what better place is there to spend the summer? And if that's not working, everything I try to do will not happen, and I completely appreciate that and want to be able to support in any way that I can to make that possible.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. Staying with you, you mentioned committees there. We've got Marilyn Smith on the call, who joined Middlesex's board about a year or so ago when we as a club were looking to diversify our own board. And I think there are perceptions that perhaps cricket still has male-dominated committees, male-dominated boards. It's hugely important that clubs get women onto committees and onto boards and into administration roles at clubs, because that's really the only way we're going to start to change the shape of the game moving forward, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, as with everything, any discussion you have, the more different voices you can have in there, and the more diverse backgrounds and the more extreme experiences that you have within that conversation, the greater the outcome will ever be. And I've been lucky enough to present to the board on a number of occasions and sit on subcommittees with Marilyn. And I think the experience that she brings and the side that she thinks challenges everybody else, and that's the same for within club environments, get more people onto the main committees so that you can voice your experiences, not just in cricket, but the challenges that you might come across in life, or the things you've learnt in your workplace, or as you've come through the education system. There's so many different experiences that we don't appreciate when we only speak to those who we tend to gravitate towards because we feel similar to them. So yeah, the more we can do that, and the more that we can support women to feel that they have a really valid point to make, because those conversations will have much better outcomes if we're having the entire population represented in them.
Absolutely. And Emma, you yourself, your experiences at club cricket, working on committees, how important did you find that, and how influential were you able to be?
Yeah, I think that when I started at my club on the committee, not only was I the only woman, I was also the only actual player on the committee. And I think that having that voice into what is happening in the club is so important, because it brings a whole understanding. And so that's why I think that it is important to get in and explain what's happening. A lot of it is explaining what the different needs are, because if you only got one angle, you can only see it from there. Whereas if you've got somebody else coming in and explaining why they need something done maybe this way, silly things like they'd done the changing rooms and they hadn't put reflective glass, it was just completely transparent glass into the changing room, because they just forgotten that we have female players. And I was going, you need to frost that glass. They were, oh yeah, we do. So I think you need different voices to explain what everyone needs, so that the clubs can be inclusive of everyone they've got passing through.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. Leah, I'm going to come to you now. That incredible day back at Lord's in 2017 when England women lifted the World Cup trophy. I think everyone on this call can probably remember where they were when that happened. I was stuck in a traffic jam for 4.5 hours on the M1 and had a ticket to the game, so I was slightly disappointed. But how much can we help? I mean, that really shone a light on women's cricket. How much can we use that focus moving forward to help us get more women and girls into the game?
I think it was definitely a massive starting point, and I think it was really one of those sparks that has created the conversations, and it's almost created that recognition that women are good at sport and we are allowed to play sport. And I think that's the big issue across the whole kind of community, is that people don't always recognise that women are good at sport. It's very much kind of, well, sport's a male thing. And especially in sports like cricket, which is historically male dominated, it really did start that recognition. and whether that be, you know, taking your little sister or taking your daughter down to the local cricket club and just getting them inspired. And I think that's the big thing, is that we're seeing women's cricket on TV a lot more. We're seeing a lot more of women in the news about it as well. Like if you take the 100, they didn't only put Stokes in the limelight, but they also put Heather Knight in there. And just that recognition of this is the England captain, this is someone who is seen as equal as the men, is a big starting point. And I think if we can do that at grassroots right the way through is going to be the key, because there are women in sport, whether that be a player, a coach, a physio, a manager, there are women. We might not be the same in numbers, but there are women across sport, and it's just that recognition and that encouragement and trying to make things feel very welcome and open. Because I've definitely been in clubs where I didn't feel welcome and I didn't feel like I could stay at that club purely because I was female. And I think that's going to be the big thing, is if you're part of a club or if you're going to a club, is just make it welcome, whether they're male or female. It's just having that welcomeness, that open to kind of learn, and also that inspiration from the top down is kind of, if you've got someone who is a senior there, trying to encourage them down to like one of the kids training sessions. That was a big thing that we did, was we took the female first team players or second team players, and they'd come down to the under 15s, under 11s, right down to the quick cricket, just to be like, this is who you can look up to, and it's someone in your club. Even things like, you know, pointing them out, going, oh, you know, there's the women's county cricket's on today, let's go and do a group trip there. It's just that finding that inspiration and that little things which kind of makes women in sport seem a lot more normal, because it is normal.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think we've got some wonderful role models in the sport, and we really do need to capitalise on them and put those up on a pedestal for youngsters to look up to.
Mm-hmm.
Danni, I'm coming to you now. Talking about professionalism in women's sport, it almost seems unthinkable that we've had to wait until this year to be able to announce that we have domestic professional full-time women's cricketers. It's a step that's taken a long time to get here, and thankfully it's now here. And I know obviously you've got 5 pros at Sunrisers. How big a difference will that make to getting girls into the game and women into cricket careers, if they can genuinely see that there's a career as a professional at the end of it?
I think it's massive, Fletch. And like you say, that even if we have 5, we want that 5 to become 6, 10, 15 as quickly as possible, because the limits that this game can reach and the opportunities we can afford the young players coming through are never ending. So I think it's important we don't rest on our laurels, and I spend most of my time every day trying to work out how we accelerate that as quickly as we can to make sure that people have those opportunities to dream of their future being in a professionalised environment. So that we want to be able to open up games this summer. Like the most frustrating thing last year, yes, it was brilliant. We played the Rachel Hayhoe Flint Trophy, and it was amazing that ECB supported us to get elite women's cricket back on in the summer that it was 2020. The thing that upset me the most is we couldn't do it with anybody in the ground. We weren't able to invite the fans, the community, the family and the friends of those girls who'd given up a lot over the years to be there as they played their first game, took their first wicket, scored their first 50. That was the most upsetting part of that. So that summer 2021, we all know there's a lot of uncertainties out there, but our dream is that we will have people in grounds able to watch these women play cricket. And it's not the 5 that have got a contract, it's the 10 that give up huge amounts of their time for expenses. They don't get much more, but they balance work and university and school around being able to train, because they want to be the ones that stand out as much as those that have a contract. And it's so exciting that we can show everybody out there how good these girls are. Leah said it, like, women, when you watch them play, the skill level is increasing all the time. It's a sport that's, when you understand cricket, it's a really, really interesting and engaging spectacle. So yeah, we want to get those girls out there. Hopefully everyone knows their name by the end of the summer and everyone's cheering them on, and let's watch some cricket in the sunshine with some really, really great athletes on the field.
Good stuff. Couldn't agree more. Leah, I'm going to start this. This is my final couple of questions I'm going to put to each of the 3 of you, really, putting you on the spot a little bit firstly. So first part of the 2-part question is, what are the qualities, Leah, that you would say you possess that have helped you succeed as a woman working in cricket? And the second part, is what advice would you offer to any women interested in getting into a career in cricket?
Yeah, so I think definite key characteristics that I've really worked towards is that kind of the passion, whether that be for the career, the sport, whatever it is really use that passion to drive you through. That dedication as well. It takes time. Nothing is instantaneous in sport, as we all know. It's that dedication, whether that be going to training when you don't quite feel like it, whether it's doing that extra bit of studying so that you can get to the next level of that job, or just being able to kind of really focus in on what it is, whether it's, sitting and watching that late night game because they're playing out in South Africa and the time difference changes it. It's giving up that bit of dedication, that time to be able to put it towards your next step. So they're the two really key things for me, passion and dedication. And what was the second part? Sorry.
What advice would you offer to any women interested in getting into a career in cricket?
So biggest bit of advice that I ever was given is just keep working hard. No matter how difficult and how big that obstacle feels, putting in that time and that hard work will 100% pay off. It might take a year, 5 years, 10 years, but it will come off, right? I will always remember, finishing uni and going straight down to the rugby club and not finishing until 10, 11 o'clock and having to get up at 5 in the morning for the placement the next day. But 100% that was worth it to be in the position where I am now, working with these elite athletes, doing what I've dreamt of doing from such a young age. So it's just hard work will pay off.
Brilliant. Leah, before I move on to Emma for those two questions, I've just got one last question that's come in on the chat panel, which is a bit ironic really, because I've been talking for half an hour about how great careers in cricket are for women. But Monica asks, you mentioned internships for physios in rugby. Do you have any links to university physio departments to offer internships?
So most of the ones for Saracens were through Middlesex, because there is a Middlesex uni base at what was Allianz Stadium. I don't know what they've changed it to now. But a lot of the time it's the local universities. So I'm currently doing my master's at the moment at Bath, and they link quite nicely with Bath Rugby. So often look at the universities that are attached, because they're often the ones that will use the sports team as a placement or as an internship.
Amazing. Thank you, Leah. Right, Emma, over to you. A test of how much notice you were paying and attention you were paying now. Those same two questions to you.
Okay, so things I bring to the role is I'm good at remembering things that were told to me a few minutes before. I would say it's quite difficult to stress me out. I am quite good at juggling a lot of things and prioritizing. So the role I'm in, it's a lot about prioritizing what has to be done today, what can wait. And I think that I am good at making a list and checking that I'm methodical. And I think you need to be methodical. If you're trying to get games played with a lot of different people to be there at one place, you need to make sure that everything is done in an orderly fashion. And I quite like that. I've talked a lot about a wall planner. I've got too much really, and I love my wall planner. So things like that. Advice for people wanting to work in cricket. I'm going to use something from my cricket coaching, which is basically watch the ball and decide what ball it is you're watching. So for me, I wanted to work in this role in cricket, and I kept my eye on that and worked towards that and took steps to put myself in a position to hit the ball, which in this job is the operations exec role. That was what I was going for. So decide what you want, work out what you need to get there, and every step, make it a step towards that.
Thanks, Emma. That's great advice. And a woman after my own heart. I love a list. Danni, finally, let's finish with you. Those same two questions to your good self.
So my job doesn't involve remembering what I was told a couple of minutes ago. So hopefully I'll say something different to what Leah said a few minutes ago. I would say a couple of qualities that I've found handy over the years, and I think to pass them on. First one is I'm pretty damn stubborn and don't take no for an answer very often. And I think if you want to work in this field, then sometimes you've got to challenge people, and you've got to be able to stand up for what you believe is right. So I think that's helped me quite well in the past and on my journey. I would also say that first impressions really do count in the sporting world, and the more, as Leah said, you can immerse yourself in the game, so you come at it with some knowledge and some understanding of not just cricket as a sport, but the landscape itself. What are the current strategic plans that people are working through? What are the club's outcomes? What are the county's objectives? Things like that. That really pays towards having a really good first impression with people, because that will open up conversations going forward. And it is ultimately just watching cricket. So if you love the game, you'll watch more of it, and you'll come at it with a really great knowledge base. That means when someone asks you a question, all of a sudden this comes out of your mouth and they forget whether you're female or male. And I think that would be a really key bit of advice from me. And then finally, a last bit of advice would be yourself, in that we're not trying to fit into a world that is being prescribed to us. So bring to it what you are as a woman. Bring your experiences, embrace the fact that you have other things in your life. And I think they're the key things, because like we said earlier, those diverse conversations really have the best outcomes. And that hopefully rounds it off nicely for you, Fletch.
Danni, that rounds it off beautifully. Thank you so much. I just want to finish up by saying a massive thank you to the good 40 of you that have tuned in to watch this broadcast. I found it fascinating. I hope you have. Want to also say a massive thank you to our panel of Danni, Emma and Leah. Thanks for giving us your time and your insight into working in cricket as a woman. This has been really interesting. So without further ado, unless anybody has any further questions, I will draw this to a close. Thank you ever so much.